All right, welcome back to our next segment. Okay, today we're not going to do much playing, so we won't be needing the drumsticks. Going to set them to the side. We won't be needing the practice pad. Going to set it to the side. But we're going to do some theory. Okay, music theory. I want to make music theory so simple that you can. It's like eating cake and ice cream. Okay, so it's going to be real simple. So the first thing I want to deal with is really time signatures. Okay, we dealt with it some in our previous segment, but I really want to dig into it a little deeper on this so that you can understand, so we don't have to worry about going back to that later on as we progress on to our next segments. Okay, so let's talk about time signatures. All right, so you have a normal time signature, which is like 2/4 time, 4/4 time, 3/4 time. Okay, but then you have those irregular time signatures that's like 3/8, 9/8, 7/8, 12/8, 5/8. If you think of like odd numbers, those are irregular time signatures. Okay, those are those weird ones, and you see it in music. So if you get going really well in your music and you want to jump into classical music, you're going to see a lot of mixed time signatures in the music. Okay, so I want to educate you now, so when you see that, you won't be shocked. You already know. Okay, so whenever you see something 2/4 time, remember the top number tells you how many beats are in the measure. So if it's 2, there's going to be 2 beats in the measure. Now, when you're counting beats in a measure, it can roll over to the end of the and. So it can go 1 and 2 and, or 1 and 2 and 3 and, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. It cannot roll over to the next count. So if it's in 2/4, it can't go to 3. If it's in 4/4, it can't go to 5. If it's in 3/4, it can't go to 4. Okay? You have to stay in that bracket of counting. You can't change it. So like when you look at music, you see the bar lines. That's that line that's coming straight down. Okay? That's the bar line. That separates your music. Okay? And if you keep going all the way to the end of the music, you see a double bar line. That's like a period. That's like saying, okay, stop. That's the end of the music, unless it keeps going. All right? Sometime it do, sometime it don't. Just depends on how long the piece is. Okay? So let's jump back to 2/4 time. 2/4 time, we know I already talked about that the top number tells you how many beats are in the measure. The bottom number, which is 4, tells you that a quarter note gets 1 count. Because if you're counting quarter notes in a bar, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so that's how you would count that. Now, if it was in 2/8 time, kind of change the bottom number on you. Okay, if it's in 2/8, if you think of eighth, think of eighth note. Okay, 2/8, eighth note. Okay, so that's telling you that you got eighth notes in that bar, and it still has to come out to 2 beats. Okay, same thing if it's at 2/16. Think of 16th notes. Okay, you still have to have equivalent of 16th notes that come out to 2, because the measure has to come out to 2, because the top number tells us there's 2 beats in a measure. Okay, that's simple. I know it. It's simple. All right, so let's jump down to another one. Let's jump down to 3/8. It's the same procedure. Okay, eighth notes in the measure has to be the count of 3. All those irregular time signatures mean the same thing. Okay, it's just telling you the top number. If it's a 12, it means it has to have 12 beats in a measure. And it's going to be, if it says 8, it's going to be eighth notes. Okay, so you got to have enough eighth notes to come up to 12 to complete that measure. Okay, now in elementary school and high school, you may not see these irregular time signatures that much, because they're normally in advanced music classes. Okay, or if you go into competition, you may get a piece that has it in there. All right, but just remember, irregular time signatures are normally odd numbers. We know what even numbers is, right? Anything that can go into it evenly. Odd number is something that can't go into it evenly. Okay, that's why it's called irregular time signatures. Okay, let's look at the basic rhythms. This is a sheet that you'll see in front of you. Okay, it's already dealing with, we already talked about the rhythm tree, the eighth notes, and all that good stuff, the counts you get. Okay, but if you look down the sheet, you start seeing where they got beats together. Like you'll see one that has quarter notes and eighth notes and half notes. Okay, all those are mixed up. Now, at the end of it, it's asking you, what is the count? Okay, so if I had two half notes, we know a half note gets two beats. Okay, so if I had two half notes, it would be what? Four. Right. Okay, so just like a whole note is how many beats? Four. Right. So let me see if I can trick you up a little bit. I'm not trying to, but I'm just going to see if you're on your A game. All right. So if we had two eighth notes and one quarter note, what would it be? Because we know it takes two eighth notes to equal one quarter note. Okay. So if we had two eighth notes, which technically is one, and we have a quarter note, how many beats is that? Right. Two. Okay, so remember we talked about odd meters. Like you can see an odd meter, and it's rarely you see it in elementary school or high school. But just for the sake of it, if I had a whole note and two quarter notes and another whole note, what would that be? So we got a whole note, which is four, two quarter notes, which is what? Six. Then I added another whole note. So we got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's still an irregular time signature because the count is so high. Okay? It's still irregular. All right? So let's do one more. Okay? Let's say I got an eighth note, a quarter note, and a half note. So again, I got an eighth note, a quarter note, and a half note. So I already got 2 and 1 is 3. So now technically I have a dotted note, okay? Because a dotted note is half of its previous beat. So if I had a quarter note, that dot is going to represent half of it, okay? So really it's 3 dot, or should I say dotted half note, okay? Because it's going to come out to 3, all right? Anytime you see a dot on music, if it's a dotted quarter note, if it's a dotted whole note, a dotted half note, it's half of its value, okay? So if you see a dot on a quarter note, you know it's going to be half of its value, so it's going to be a half note, okay? So we already know 1 and 2 because we added a dot and it's half its value, okay? So that's how you do that. Dots can be confusing, but you see dots in music all the time, okay? At any level, you can see a dot. Just remember, a dot is half of the previous note's value because it'll be right behind the note. So if it had a quarter note, it would be a quarter note and a dot behind it. Whole note, and a dot behind it, okay? To let you know that that is half of the value, okay? So you're going to extend it that long, okay? One more thing I want you to pay attention to on some more sheet of music that you have in front of you. You see the music, it goes all the way to the end, but then you see 2 dots at the solid black line, and then there's a skinny black line. Those 2 dots mean repeat, okay? So when you see repeat, you got to go all the way back to the beginning of that line, okay? That's a repeat, where you have to repeat it, okay? Now, sometime in music, you'll see where there's actually notes written, then you'll see something that looks like a little asterisk, where you see a slash and a dot and a dot. That means repeat the previous measure, okay? So when you see that in a measure and it just looks like that, okay, you got to go back and repeat that measure, okay? That's simple stuff. It may sound a little mind-boggling right now because it's new to you, but once you start seeing it in music, it'll make a lot more sense, okay? And all that is right in front of you on your music, okay? It's right in front. Just take your time and study. Theory is fun, but it's just like math. That's all it is. Theory is just like math. So we're going to move on to our next sheet, and I'm going to talk about something else. But before I do, let's talk about a beat. What is a beat? What is it? What's a beat? A beat is the pulse of a note. Okay? It's the pulse of a note. That's the pulse. And if you want to go even deeper, your heart beats at 140 BPM. And we know BPM is what? Beats per minute. Okay? So your heart sitting still like I'm sitting right now, my heartbeat should be beating at 140 BPM. Okay? Now your heart can elevate if you're doing something extreme like exercising or doing something like that. Then it's going to change. Your pulse is going to change. The heartbeat's going to change. But just sitting still, just remember, your heartbeat is 140 BPM. Okay? That's something that I taught you. And it didn't even cost you no money. All right? So let's move on to our next sheet of music. Okay, so you can see now in front of you, we got that music in front of you that has the dots, the dotted half notes, okay? On that music, I highlighted all the dotted half notes so it can alert you to let you know that that measure has to come out to 3. Okay, we talked about already the top number tells you how many beats in the measure. Now, one thing that you can remember, every time you see a time signature, if you're reading music and you're writing it out, okay, always write it in pencil, never in pen, okay? Pen does not look good on music that you have to pass on to the next student because you have to white it out. Pencil, you can just erase it, okay? Because what needs to be alerted for you may not need to be alerted for the next student, okay? So that's why we do things in pencil, okay? So also at the end of the music, you see those dots. The dots mean what? Repeat, exactly, okay? And it's going to always be a solid black line and then a little skinny line, okay? Also in music, sometimes you see something that looks sort of like an asterisk almost, not quite, but it's a slash and it has a dot and a dot, okay? That means that you're going to repeat the previous measure, okay? So if you see like a measure, then it has that slash and a dot on top and on the bottom, that's a repeat sign too. It's telling you that you need to repeat the previous measure. No matter where it falls out in the music, you still have to repeat the previous measure, okay? So we did some theory today. I hope you learned something. I hope it's helpful. So on our next segment, we're going right back to playing, okay? So I hope you be ready for it because we're going to do some challenging stuff, all right? Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you on our next segment. Have a good one.